The Teviot estate, Tower Hamlets, in London's East End. Today, a family are moving, but they're not moving by choice. The family are Bengali, and for them, life on this estate has become unbearable. Mr. Tohed Ali, his wife and children have been subjected to persistent racial harassment, grounds now under council policy for rehousing. In effect, they're being evacuated. The Ali case is not an isolated one. On this estate over the last year, there's been a total of 46 attacks. Injuries and hospital treatment are set against a background of daily abuse, property damage, attempted arson. Originally, there were 6 Bengali families living in these blocks. Now, they've all gone. On this London estate, the racists are winning. Finding somewhere safe to live, if you're a Bengali in Tower Hamlets, is not easy. The first house Tohed Ali was offered promised better times, but his optimism was short-lived. The racists had got there first. As well as the graffiti, pigs' trotters nailed to the door, a calculated religious insult for Muslims. The mark of the National Front. A council flat south of the Thames in the borough of Greenwich. Shirley Smith, not her real name, will also now have to move her young family. In her case, the attackers got inside.
The first thing that hit me was the graffiti on the wall. After that, there was all the things all over the floor, furniture wrecked. The whole flat is a mess. So, television smashed with a hammer. My clothing and everything is ruined. I've come home and found dogs messed through the letterbox. But nothing to this scale has ever happened before. So it's quite frightening to think that someone can come in and do this. You know, you sort of think, thank God I wasn't in there. The night it happened, we phoned the police and one was here. He was quite sympathetic that morning. And next day I had 2 come round and they didn't seem so bothered. You know, matter of fact, part of our job, we'll do it and get out attitude. And they sort of said, I probably wouldn't hear from them again. You know, that would be the last, unless I had something that I found in the house that didn't belong to me, that needed fingerprinting, you know. And I haven't heard nothing more from them either. You know, I expected a bit more involvement from them, I think, but I sort of don't want to report anything to them anymore because it's like they're not bothered.
For fear of further attacks, Shirley Smith wouldn't reveal her identity. Mr. Kashnood Hussain is prepared to be identified. He has nothing left to lose.
This is the first time they tried to burn the flat. They put petrol in through the letterbox and they set a light. This is the first time and there's another time, so if you come in, I'll show you.
This is northeast London, the borough of Waltham Forest. Another family, another attack.
We went out shopping and about 3:45, a lady from the 181 same flats, she came around and told us your flat is on the fire. So when we came here, there was the police and fire brigade and everybody was here already. The fire was out, but this is what happened to it. They just took the sofa here and they set a light. There was a video, TV and everything, and took the video and smashed the TV. They don't like our people in these flats. It's 2-3 times my car was downstairs in the car park. They smashed the windows, and the same time it happened to about every color people around here. Obviously, I was shocked. When I came here, I couldn't believe it. For 10-15 minutes, this is my flat. I thought I was just dreaming.
2 doors down the corridor live Janet and Jimmy Williams. Last summer, their baby daughter Louisa was shot at.
We was on the main road. As we was coming along the curve to cross over the road, a car came around the curve and slowly, you know, followed us behind us. And then we heard a crack and looked back, and by that time the car had had sped off and gone round the next corner. And when we heard the crack, Louisa cried out, and we looked down at her and we saw, well, she was covered in blood, and we saw it was from the side of her head. So we took her out of the buggy, and as soon as we was on the main road, we went to the first shop that was open that had a telephone. They called for the police and the ambulance. And then when they came, they took us to Newham General. But when we got there, they had realised that the bullet wasn't on the surface of her skin. It had penetrated a lot further. They took some brain scan pictures to see how far the pellet had penetrated, and then he told us it had pierced her skull.
The family was unhappy with the police response.
Well, their attitude was that it was not a racist attack. First of all, they didn't have no evidence about that, but they seemed to want to make that point clear from before they even knew what actually happened. All they was interested in was that it really for us not to make a big issue out of it.
Yeah. They wasn't helpful to us, and they still aren't being helpful, because it's more or less that they opened and closed that case in the sense that they saw it as somebody had a personal grudge against us. So therefore, it's not really a police matter. It is a police matter because she got injured, but it's not something to pursue on the lines of a racist attack.
The unwillingness of the police to attribute racial motives to attacks on blacks and Asians was identified by the authors of a report by the Policy Studies Institute. Their report, commissioned by the Metropolitan Police, also found widespread racial prejudice within the force. Commander Malcolm Sullivan, one of the top policemen in London's East End.
Well, it's a subject which has been subject of scrutiny recently, as you well know, from the Policy Studies Institute report, where it made comment on this. And it's something I take very seriously indeed, that there is no place for this sort of behaviour or that sort of thing in the police service, and we don't want it to affect the way that our officers deal with these incidents on the street. There is loose talk possibly within the police station, which I don't condone at all, but when it's put into practice, it doesn't affect police officers' performance. And every newcomer to this district is seen by me, and I tell him personally what my policy is and what I expect of him. And it takes a concerted effort by all of us, starting from me, to put the thing in the forefront of their minds, to stress all the way through the importance that we all put on this particular problem, which is an insidious problem in our community. Numerically, not very strong, but of course, emotively, it is a very serious problem.
The problem is that however sincere Commander Ferguson, and I'm sure Commander Sullivan, his successor, might appear to be, it isn't them that comes down onto estate when a call for help goes out at, say, 8 o'clock at night. It's ordinary police officers who turn up, and in this borough, certainly, the practice or the behaviour of those officers is often very unsympathetic, very inappropriate, and frankly racist. And it doesn't really matter, therefore, what the very senior officers say, particularly when talking to the media. What matters is how the officers behave when they're called out to an incident in the evening by a Bengali family and how they respond to that. And that hasn't improved at all.
Vicky Carter's views are based on 3 years' experience as a lawyer with the Community Alliance for Police Accountability. In particular, it advises Bengali families and monitors the police response to racial harassment.
Harassment isn't easy to police. I mean, I'm not pretending it's easy to police, but if you just think for a moment, you do not go home at night and live with the fear that your window's going to be put in that night, that there are going to be bangs on the door in the middle of the night, there's going to be nasty stuff shoved through your letterbox, that you're going to be abused, spat at and hit every time you, your wife, your children leave the front door. Now, that's what you're talking about with low-level harassment, and it isn't pleasant. And the fact that people are expected to live with that is appalling. Now, nobody should be expected to live with it, and it can be policed. If, for once, the police acknowledged it was taking place and made a determined effort to respond by turning up, by listening to what the victims were saying, by taking statements, by interviewing or arresting or cautioning the perpetrators, and by stamping down hard then they could do something to prevent its continuation.
A winter's night on the Bethnal Green estate. Muhibur Rahman returns home from work under escort. He's unable to enjoy the basic British freedom to go to and from work in peace. He suffered harassment from an established gang that regularly blocked his path and intimidated him on his own estate. A very frightening experience.
Yeah, I always feel frightened. When I entered the main gate, every night I found 20, 15, sometimes 30, sometimes the 15 boys. They block the main gate and corridors, and I think they're waiting for me to, the attack.
Muhibur Rahman and his daily escort identified members of the gang.
Yeah, I told the police so many times. So many times policemen came into my house and I told them.
The intimidation inflicted on Mr. Rahman included one serious assault. In this case, the police successfully brought a prosecution for actual bodily harm. But the general level of intimidation is not considered worthy of prosecution if it falls into the category of common assault.
Well, at the moment, we don't prosecute cases of common assault, which are very minor incidents where no injury is caused. Of course, that might be a minor incident to us, but in the eyes of the victim, it might be a very serious matter, particularly if it happens more than once. And in the light of this, on a force basis, we are reviewing our whole policy of common assault.
There are lots of offences that are committed all the time, and the police have a discretion whether or not to prosecute. Most of the offences, most of the charges brought against people, say, on picket lines or in demonstrations, would be equally suitable in that sort of situation. Threatening words and behaviour, abusive words and behaviour, insulting words and behaviour. The police use that charge all the time in pickets and demonstrations. There's no earthly reason why a similar sort of charge could not be brought against people congregating and threatening Bengali people on an estate.
On those estates, Bengali groups and local residents organise nightly patrols for themselves, paying calls on vulnerable families to reassure them, thus underlining the widely held view amongst Asians that they must defend themselves against the threat of racialist violence. Mukit Miah, a schoolboy from Stepney. One day last year, he left school to go to the chip shop.
As we were going through the churchyard, my mate noticed 13 or 14 youths standing near the church door. And at that time I didn't notice it, and then they started running towards us. Then my friend shouted my name, and then he ran one direction, I ran the other. I took about 2 steps, and they grabbed me, they pushed me over. I tried to get up again, they kicked me in the head, and then I just passed out. I didn't know that I was cut at first. Then I started, just feeling the slight pain at the back from the cut. I didn't notice how badly it was cut, nothing.
The police had been alerted to the possibility of an attack by Mukit's headmaster. He'd warned the police that a gang of youths with a known history of violence to Asians was congregating outside the school gates. The police answered the call, deploying a district support unit. It stayed for a short time, then left. A police presence remained, but the attack occurred shortly afterwards, out of their sight, 200 yards from the school gates. Mukit is scarred for life, wounds that required 26 stitches in all. His mother, Sarah, is still affected by the attack.
And when I went to see him in hospital, then I find out how bad he had injury. And I felt shocked and horrified, Mukit. And still I feel I can't find myself his peace. Even if now I talk it, I can't talk about him.
Mommy bring. Who gave it to Mommy? Who gave it to me?
Sarah works as a primary school assistant. she also knows what it's like to be physically attacked. It happened here 2 years ago. 2 youths accosted her on her way home. First they insulted her, taunted her, then one boy hit her with a piece of wood. The attack was reported to the police.
Police came to my house and he said he can't do anything. He said, this is not my job, I can't do anything for you.
The police refused to act. Sarah Bibby took out a private prosecution, no easy matter, and successfully got a conviction against a white youth for actual bodily harm.
But beyond all that becomes the attitude of the policemen as it turned out, to Mrs. Bibby when she called them for help, when she came up with her injuries, when she told what had happened, said that there were witnesses. None of those witnesses were interviewed by the police. None of the witnesses had statements taken. They were in no position to judge whether there was a case that was winnable in the court or not. They simply made a decision not to take it to court. They didn't, and she did, and she won. But it's just indicative of the way the police behave. They will belittle offences against the black people in this community.
The finding was from the investigation that there was an error of judgment by the officers concerned, that they acted unprofessionally and the supervision wasn't all that it should have been. And as far as I'm concerned, that was a very serious matter indeed, and I don't think that we performed then as we should do and as I would expect my officers to perform. And certainly at the end of the day, Mrs. Bibby received a letter of apology from the Deputy Commissioner stressing how we felt about the matter.
Mrs. Bibby's complaint has been upheld by the Police Complaints Board. The police stress the case is something that happened in the past. They emphasise that racial attacks have recently been placed amongst the Met's top priorities for 1985.
Very recently, the last few weeks, a restructuring of the force was announced by the Commissioner, and one of the purposes of this restructuring is to bring the police closer to the community, and that will now be planned and will take place over the next 18 months or 2 years. And at the end of the day, the Commissioner is very hopeful that in fact it will bring us even closer to the community and make us even more effective.
Overall responsibility for policing racial attacks rests with A7 branch at Scotland Yard. Their last strategy encouraged better record-keeping of racial incidents and better investigation and follow-up of individual cases. We obtained the official police records for racial attacks for one London district. They reveal the size of the problem. This column shows whether or not there was an arrest. The answer in each case, no. For this area, last year, 84 recorded incidents, just 6 arrests. Take just one entry, the 7th of October. These are the people behind the statistics. Mrs. Channan Devi, she and her daughter exiled from their own home after repeated attacks. But she returned to her flat with us to describe what's been happening.
What can we do? Where can we go? If we stay at my daughter's house, it is too small. They have a family too, and there's not enough room for us all to sleep there. It's very difficult. The youths threw fireworks and burnt our curtains. They annoy us all the time. Ever since we arrived, we have been having this trouble. If they break a window today and we repair it, they smash it again the next week. We have a lot of trouble. There is a group of lads who hang around and shout insults at us. One night we were sitting here. Outside there was a great deal of noise and we didn't know what was going on. Suddenly our window smashed and this pipe came flying through. Like this. We narrowly escaped injury.
In all, the police recorded 6 occasions when the home was attacked. The police say they've put the house under surveillance and interviewed parents of some of the children on the estate. They've made no arrests, and they say only one incident was definitely racial, because only once were the words "Paki Paki" heard prior to an attack, and Mrs. Devi remains unconvinced by some of the policemen who've called.
They come and ask us questions, but our troubles don't go away. What can we do? We tell the police say, you catch them and then phone us. But how can we catch them?